We preview the Baltimore Ravens Week 8 matchup with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a game day crossover Thursday, coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we are back. Another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today and listening, making us your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms, including over on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less in their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. And it is game day. The Baltimore Ravens will face off against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 8, looking to make it 2 straight wins for the first time this season. I think is really important the Ravens get this win, but the Buccaneers are looking for this win for their own reasons. And here to talk with us, it'll be David Harrison of Locked On Buccaneers as we dive into this matchup, key storylines, key players, and more. So we have a ton to dive into on the show here today. If you're here with us in video form, be sure to subscribe to this channel on YouTube, and also in audio form, follow along with us there. It helps out a ton. On YouTube, hit the like button. It does help out a ton as well. Be sure to follow me on Twitter also at ChaosStriker34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. Without any further ado, let's dive into Crossover Thursday with David Harrison of Locked On Bucs.
The Baltimore Ravens are one of 2 teams in the AFC North with a winning record. Meanwhile, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are one of 4 with a losing record in the NFC South, and they're both in first place, respectively. Tomorrow night, they're meeting up in the only NFL stadium equipped with its very own pirate ship. I'm David Harrison, covering the Buccaneers for SI's BucsGameDay.com, and today we've got Kevin Ostreicher joining us, managing editor of the Ravens Wire, and of course, the host of the Locked On Ravens podcast. Find Kevin on Twitter at KOstreicher34 and find me at DHarrison82. Kevin, if you told me all the parameters that I just laid down in that cold open were going to exist on this Thursday night football game in preseason, I would have laughed you out of our Twitter DM and probably the entire network, because I don't know if anybody saw this collapse for the Buccaneers coming. But how are things in Ravens land? I mean, sitting atop, right, tied for the lead. I don't know what the tiebreaker situation is, but sitting atop the AFC North.
They got that tiebreaker. Week 5, Cincinnati. They beat the Bengals. So currently head-to-head, they're 2-0 in their division. That's more games than they won in their division all of last season. They went 1-5 in their division last year. But after a win against Cleveland in Week 7, that's their other big divisional win. I think a lot of fans right now, wasn't a pretty win for the Ravens, and they almost blew it again. The story for the Ravens this year has been the blown fourth quarter leads. Yeah. You have Week 2 against the Dolphins, that collapse against Tua and the Dolphins. Week 4, Buffalo, Josh Allen leads them to a win. And then you have in Week 6, the Giants, a game that they were well on their way to winning, penalties, mistakes, and the Ravens lose that game somehow. So in Week 7, you have a Justice Hill fumble when the Ravens are up 3 deep into Browns territory, and you're thinking, oh, here we go again. And the Browns have a chance to tie or win the game. But the Ravens, they buckled down, and they did it. They won. And I think for them, that's a huge, huge thing mentally, just to know that, hey, we could do this even when something goes wrong. So now you have a short week. You're traveling down to Tampa Bay. You got that pirate ship in that stadium you got to go face off in. And I think for the Ravens, for me, it's a game of 2 teams that really need this win for different reasons. The Ravens to stack momentum. The Ravens have flip-flopped. It's been win-loss, 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 win. So to stack 2 straight wins would be great. And I know for Tampa, David, it's just being able for them to get out of that rut they're in right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely 100% true. And it's weird because, you know, as much as the Buccaneers have struggled and as many things as they've done to kind of shoot themselves in the foot, they still kind of carry that mystique, I feel like, outside of Tampa, right? A lot of fans are bitter and confuse a lot of media members. I mean, there are some contentious moments between media members covering this team and the personnel getting interviewed in press conferences right now, Kevin. So it's weird though, because if you're the Ravens and you help this kind of collapse for the Buccaneers, then you still feel really good about what you're doing. But the bottom line is the biggest story for the Buccaneers entering this game is they still haven't scored a first quarter touchdown. And I know, like, that's just kind of a microcosm of their list of issues. But I think that really kind of demonstrates what is happening with this team. Not only are they not finishing games, but they're just not starting games, to be quite honest with you. The Bucs defense, meanwhile, has given up 4 first quarter touchdowns across 3 games total out of the 7 they played. So it's really not a bad number for the defense. It just shows that the defense is kind of keeping the team in it, but the offense is failing to take advantage. In today's NFL, and we know Lamar Jackson's had all kinds of, he's what was it? He's a running back that throws the ball, or a wide receiver that throws the ball, and all this stuff. Teams still, I think when you go team to team, they would still tell you that they want Lamar Jackson to have to hold the ball versus be able to do things with his legs. Well, how do you make him do that? You make him do that by scoring points. The Ravens, like you mentioned, you bring this up. I literally have this right here in my notes, have outscored opponents 58-27 in first half of their losses. And they've been outscored 65-20 in the second half of their losses. So I say that to give Buccaneers a little bit of hope. If they don't start fast and they end up trailing the Ravens, like you just outlined and like those numbers show, you actually have an opportunity possibly to come back in the second half. But Kevin, given the fact that the Buccaneers offense can't get out of their own way, whether it's turnovers, penalties, bad throws by Tom Brady, bad play calling, where if the Buccaneers become the next team, let's just say trends follow all the way to halftime, Bucs come out slow, Ravens take a lead as they've done in so many games. For the Buccaneers come out at halftime, what are those coaches going to need to exploit in Baltimore to get that win in the second half?
Well, I think for one, the Ravens this year, their offense has flip-flopped a little bit. So the first 3 weeks of the season, Lamar Jackson was looking like the favorite in the MVP conversation.
Yeah.
He was carrying the saw both with his arm and with his legs. He was their entire offense pretty much, kind of for over 80% of their yards in total. But now we have seen, while the pass offense carried that rush offense in the first 3 weeks, we've seen it flip-flop. And now the run offense is carrying the pass offense. Lamar Jackson had just 16 attempts, 9 completions in their Week 7 win against Cleveland. And I think for the Ravens, a key thing to watch here is the availability of Mark Andrews, because Andrews has been by far and away their number 1 pass catcher. And Rashad Bateman has been on the injury report with a foot injury. It seems like he's trending in the right direction. We're not going to obviously know until inactives come out, it feels like. But with Andrews potentially out, if the Buccaneers can shut down that Ravens passing game, I think the Ravens running game is talented enough to where even if the Buccaneers do that, they can still garner some yards. But the key area that I would be focusing on if I'm the Buccaneers is red zone defense, because the Ravens red zone offense has not been able to score touchdowns recently. It's been very hit or miss, and it's been more miss than hit. And so my philosophy is always, if you can limit the opposing offense to a kick, a punt, or a field goal on every possession, usually if you have a high-powered offense, you can win the game. I know Tampa's offense is kind of they're trying to dig out of something right now. But I still think that with Tom Brady and with that offense, if the Ravens can't score touchdowns in the red zone, and if Tampa Bay can tighten up, if they're like the bend don't break Tampa defense, where they allow the short stuff, intermediate stuff, but don't let anything go over their heads, no big plays, no big completions, and then tighten up in the red zone, that could be a formula for success, especially with how hit or miss that Ravens red zone offense has been for them.
Yeah, and I think that's what's making Bucs fans a little bit nervous as we enter this matchup, because the defense, by and large, has been doing really well. And then at the end of the Carolina Panthers game, all of a sudden, they're giving up explosive runs left and right and giving up touchdowns to the Carolina Panthers. So hoping that trend doesn't bleed into Thursday night this week, because if it does, it may be over before the Buccaneers have a chance to make it back. And you mentioned the pass defense and keeping things in front of them. And we talked about Lamar Jackson passing a little bit. We're going to talk more about Lamar Jackson passing, because, I mean, who outside of Baltimore doesn't want to talk about Lamar Jackson's ability to throw the ball, or lack of ability to throw the ball sometimes? But Bucs fans are sweating this game, Kevin. I'm just going to put it out right to you. So if they're going to watch the game, you guys are going to watch the game Thursday night, you need a good pair of sweatpants to do it in, to help you kind of ease into the moment. And Birddogs just launched their sweatpants. I got a pair. They're super comfortable. Kevin, did you get a pair? I know a lot of us got.
I did.
You got a pair? Yeah, these things are super, super comfortable. Like wearing your most comfortable bed sheets on your legs, only not as thin and potentially revealing, depending on the type of sheets that you use. But Birddogs doesn't stop at the sweatpants. Birddogs joggers are higher quality than Lululemon, which I've just learned how to say that word, to be honest with you. And they're $20 less. Are you a shorts in the winter kind of person? A lot of you watching this are living in Florida, so you probably are. Doesn't matter if you're in Florida or 10-degree weather in New England or Chicago. They have their signature shorts with built-in liners, the most comfortable shorts in existence. Get in on the comfort by going to birddogs.com, use the promo code locked on, and they'll throw in a free Bird Dogs rope hat. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it in the lower corner of your screen. That's birddogs.com, promo code locked on, and boom, you get a free Bird Dogs rope hat with your pair of Bird Dogs, the most comfortable shorts, pants, and sweatpants with built-in liners. You will not want to take these things off. I promise you that. Kevin, my 20th wedding anniversary is coming up next spring, and if my wife hasn't left me by then, I plan on coming in big with the gift because 20 years is a milestone that deserves to stand out a bit. Helping me do that is going to be BlueNile. As the original online jeweler, BlueNile offers the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers, which is clutch for me because most people in sports media don't collect six-figure checks. Believe me, don't let the few expensive suits you see out there fool you guys. Most of us don't make that kind of money. BlueNile has also helped millions of couples create their perfect engagement ring with online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. If you're having trouble choosing, BlueNile also has jewelry experts on hand 24/7. So make your moment sparkle with BlueNile. Go to BlueNile.com. Use a promo code locked on to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's BLUENILE.com. Promo code locked on to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more at BlueNile.com. Use promo code locked on. I'm going to tell you why Lamar Jackson's history of throwing the ball matters in this game. Ravens fans, I know you love hearing about people talk about Lamar Jackson throwing the ball. And I appreciate you joining Locked On Ravens, Locked On Bucks. As we have this conversation, Kevin, I can see the look on your face. You just can't wait for it. But once you guys are done here for your second listen, make sure you check out Locked On Sports today. Go beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Available on this very app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. So, Kevin, that is my key matchup, is Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens passing game, versus this Buccaneers secondary. But we're going to make the people wait to hear what I have to say about that. And I want to hear your key matchup first.
I think for me, I'm always big on, if you're a defense, completely eliminating one area of an opposing offense. So whether that is the pass game or whether that is the run game. And I know Tampa Bay has struggled to run the football this year. They're last in the NFL right now in yards per attempt at 3.0. And look, Leonard Fournette is a talented football player, but we know Tampa's going through some injuries on the offensive line. This team is missing Ryan Jensen and missing a ton of their other starters here. You have some inexperience on that line. So my matchup here is if the Ravens can completely shut down that Tampa run game. There are other ways to run a game. Like I think that the short passing game is almost an extension of the run game. So getting Leonard Fournette involved in some screens and doing that is going to be key. But Mike Evans versus Marlon Humphrey, to me, is going to be a key one, because you want to obviously shut down that number one receiver. And I think that with Mike Evans, he's a big play threat. He's a very talented receiver, but the Ravens secondary has come on and played very well in recent weeks. It was a struggle early on for the Ravens defense. Mike McDonald, their new defensive coordinator, coming back, I'll say, from Michigan. He was with the Ravens organization for years before going there for just that one season and turned that Michigan program around. He had them in the college football playoff last year, and credit to him for doing that. But between college and the NFL, there is a big gap there. So the adjustment period coming in to being a first-time defensive coordinator in the NFL is a bit different than being a first-time defensive coordinator in college. We're seeing guys step up. Humphrey, Marcus Peters is back. He's looking great. You have guys like Kyle Hamilton. Marcus Williams was a big loss for them. He's had a ton of success against Tom Brady too himself. He's almost that Tom Brady kryptonite somewhat. But I do think that Humphrey versus Evans, maybe we'll see some other matchups throughout the game. I don't know if Humphrey's necessarily going to be shadowing him throughout the entire course of the game. But that's superstar on superstar. If the Ravens shut down the run game and they can shut down Mike Evans, I think that's a really big formula for them to win the game, especially with the way that the secondary has been playing in what hopefully will be a bounce back game for the Ravens offense. I know you got stuff to talk about though with Lamar and the Ravens offense.
I do. Just tell whoever's covering Mike Evans, make sure you keep your feet under you, because he ain't going to drop another 65-yard, whatever it was going to be, touchdown pass. All right. That's a one-time gift to the Carolina Panthers. That's not going to go up the East Coast or travel down south, I guess, for the Baltimore Ravens. All right. So let's talk about Lamar Jackson and his passing. In his career, Lamar Jackson has 4 passing games where he's gone over 300 yards in his career. So obviously not a very good passer, right? I'm just kidding. Lamar Jackson is a very good passer. He's my fantasy quarterback, guys. Calm down. But that's the truth. He only has 4 career games with 300 yards passing because he doesn't need to rely on his arm all the time. One of those games has come this season against the very Miami Dolphins that you talked about earlier and that collapse. In those games, he also has 13 touchdowns and no interceptions. That is amazing to me, that anytime this guy throws 300 plus yards, he is just ball. Like, it's not just like we're losing by a lot, so let's just hurl the ball downfield. No, 13 TDs, no interceptions. Get out of here. That is crazy. Kevin, you already touched on it. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be playing this game without Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy Bunting, who granted wasn't exactly in the greatest graces with his defense anyway, but he is at least a suitable backup if you're missing guys. Safety Antoine Winfield Jr., who might honestly be the biggest loss of this on this list, is, to me, he's an all-pro caliber safety. I happen to also cover his former Minnesota teammate Benjamin St. Juste here in Washington, and I can tell you that we talk about Antoine on at least a bi-weekly basis. That's how good Antoine is. And of course, safety Logan Ryan, who's been out for a little while. That is huge. And when you're playing a quarterback that may not be known, quote unquote, for his passing ability, and you're doing it without your two best defensive backs and two of your top four defensive backs on the field, and you're looking at starting your secondary of Jamel Dean, Zion McCollum, who honestly did not have a very good week against Carolina Panthers, Mike Edwards and Keanu Neal, who are basically both strong safeties. Mike Edwards has a little bit of coverage ability more than Keanu does, but you don't really have a whole lot of deep ball coverage experience in that group right there. You are in very, very big or very, very hot water, I should say, and in a lot of trouble. Kevin, Lamar Jackson might get his fifth career 300-yard passing game in this game if those players, Dean, McCollum, Edwards, and Neal, can't find a way to be a better coverage unit than we expect them to be.
Right. We call it Tyler Huntley time in Baltimore when Lamar Jackson just eviscerates a defense. We go back to week 1 of 2019, Marquise Brown's rookie year, where Marquise Brown's first two catches were long touchdowns, and you had backup quarterbacks in the game. And that's what it is, where you're right. The Ravens don't necessarily have to air the ball out all the time in these games where they're getting crushed in, because it's the opposite, where Lamar Jackson is just crushing these defenses, and then he doesn't have to play in the fourth quarter. So those games could have been even bigger games for Lamar Jackson. It's incredible what he's been able to do over the course of, he led the league in touchdown passes during his MVP season with 36. I think some people do forget that. He had the MVP moment last year at the Colts game on Monday Night Football, where he completed the graphics 37 to 43 passes and led the Ravens to a comeback. So for how good Lamar Jackson is a runner, and that's a very big, important part of his game, the way he's been able to grow as a passer, the Ravens love to push the ball down the field. They've done it this year. The big playability earlier in the season, Rashad Bateman had 8 catches, and he led the league in yards per catch. I think it was like 28.3 or something, because the Ravens are really going to try to push the ball down the field and get those big plays. But it's important for Lamar Jackson in this game to take the short stuff if that is what the Bucs are presenting. If the Bucs try to take away that deep play aspect, and you have a wide open guy in the flat, or you have a guy slanting across the field and there's one-on-one coverage there and he's open, it's okay to just take that short stuff, get 5 yards. Lamar Jackson has held on to the ball sometimes a little too much for a little too long, and it results in no yards gain when it could be some gain. But I've been so impressed with Lamar Jackson as a passer, and the fact that he is continuing to grow. And while, look, he hasn't been necessarily great over these last 4 weeks compared to what we saw over the first 3, it has been a definite shift where Jackson has struggled a little bit, and for him, this could be the big bounce back, the big get right game, especially with those injuries you mentioned in the secondary. And I think for the Ravens, their secondary, I mentioned that they're getting healthy there, but they do have a big loss in Calais Campbell on their defensive line, who was ruled out with an illness. So when I mentioned stopping Leonard Fournette and that Tampa Bay rush offense, it's going to be guys like Justin Metabike, guys like Travis Jones, Broderick Washington, young guys stepping up to the plate, because they also have Michael Pierce, who's down for the year with an bicep injury, I believe it was. So it's going to be the story of the young guys on the defensive line for the Ravens this week.
I'll tell you, man, again, if you had told me, 8 to 10 weeks ago that we'd be talking about the Ravens wanting to force Tom Brady to be the reason the team wins or the Bucs win, and then Lamar Jackson potentially getting a 300-yard passing game on this defense, I'd have told you that you were crazy. But that is the world we live in right now. The other world that we also live in is one where other people like to take other people's things sometimes, Kevin, and in the world of burglary, your home out there, guys, is the end zone. Your possessions are the points that they're trying to put on their scoreboard, and protect all of it. You're going to need absolutely the strongest defense you can muster. This is why I use and trust SimpliSafe Home Security. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. It's cutting-edge technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back, so you always know your home is safe. I travel a lot, and the ability to use HD cameras on my phone, whether I'm in the airport, sitting on the airplane using Wi-Fi that I pay way too much money to use because I'm an insane person, in my hotel, in the stadium during the 2-minute warning. If I want to check in on my family, I can do that. And you know what? During the drive to Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago when the Bucks played the Steelers there, my wife drove with me up to Pittsburgh. She decided to turn on the camera, and she scared my 15-year-old son because you can speak to people through your cameras as well. It's a lot of fun, guys. You should give it a try. You can also have panic buttons if you want them or need them, and all the sensors you could possibly need. So customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Again, visit simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. All right, guys, time to wrap up this crossover Thursday episode. Locked on Ravens, Locked on Bucks. Kevin Ostreicher, David Harrison here to finish what is obviously a very optimistic episode for me and for my listeners and my viewers. But look, you guys know what it is. Bucks fans we've been talking about this for a couple weeks now. Please don't let this be a Tyler Huntley game. Please do not let the Ravens put a backup quarterback in this game, because Kevin, if they do, I might just record my episode right then and there and just call it a day. Not even finish the rest of it. I don't think any of my listeners or viewers would really blame me for it either. But the Buccaneers are still favored in this game by a point, according to our good friends over at BetOnline. Kevin, do the Buccaneers win this game? If they do, how much is it by, or do the Ravens blow those odds out of the water and come away with another victory?
You know, it's funny because you're talking about, if we had talked about this 8 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago, yeah, I had this one as a loss for the Ravens before the season started. I just thought that the Buccaneers, would be a lot more consistent, I'll call it, than they have been this year. And
it's very nice of you to put it that way, by the way.
Yeah, I was trying to be a little nice with it, but no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Tampa's reeling right now. They're trying desperately, and this is going to be one of those games where they try desperately to get back on track. I think they're going to come out motivated. This is a game that I think they absolutely need to win, or else the season could spiral for them, and not in a good way. So I think they're going to do everything in their power to try to win this football game. It's a short week. The Ravens are traveling. It's the Ravens are the road team in this one. But with all that being said, I say the Ravens do win it. And I had it as a 1-point game, Ravens-wise, before the injury report came out for Tampa. But I see the injuries in the secondary. I see the injuries on the offensive line. I don't think it's a blowout. I think it's a closer game than some people think it is, at least Ravens-wise. I'll say it's a touchdown. I'll go 27-20 Ravens. And I will say, because of the fact that the Ravens, they, as we talked about in the early part of the show, have their own reasons for coming out and winning this game. Can they build the momentum, or is it going to be another win-loss flip-flop where you have to go back to the drawing board, try to gain the momentum again? But I think with Lamar Jackson, hopefully Rashad Bateman is able to play in this one, and hopefully Mark Andrews is as well. But I think this game is going to be one defensively for the Ravens, if anything. But if the offense comes out and just puts up like a 40 bomb on the Buccaneers defense that is dealing with some injuries right now, that would be, I think, the best case scenario, because I think that would spark the Ravens offense, as we've seen some inconsistencies, both execution-wise and play calling-wise. But I'll go 27-20 Ravens. That's what I'm going to stick with here.
Yeah, look, I'd rather have the teams I cover get wins than my fantasy teams get wins. But if the Ravens win by 40, at least I'm pretty sure my fantasy team will also get a win that week. So I guess that's my silver lining personally. Yeah, this is hard because I definitely had the Bucks winning this game on my preseason projections. So did James. I just looked at we literally have a document named or titled receipts. So I went back to the receipts and I looked it up. We both had this as a win for the Buccaneers. And after this one, they've got the Los Angeles Rams, which is going to be a tough matchup in its own right, even though they're having some problems. And then they kind of go to Germany against the Seattle Seahawks, who are suddenly better with Geno Smith than they were with Russell Wilson a year ago. That's amazing. The NFL world is upside down. James and I have already said this on this show. We'll probably say it on our final episode of the week as well. With everything going on, this would be the game the Buccaneers come out and actually put up like 35 and hold the Ravens to like 13 points somehow, some way, just because that's how this season has been going, right? But I can't be brazen enough to predict that, seeing what I've seen for the first 7 weeks of this season. Not only the Bucks not win this game, they obviously don't cover. If they don't win, they lose by 14 points. I've got the Ravens winning 24-10 in this one, and that's very disrespectful, and I feel very bad writing it down, but that's truly, honestly, when I think of how this game might go, that's where my head goes, man. And my listeners and viewers know if I'm anything, I'm honest. Look, there are people inside the organization that do listen to this show. And I hope that somebody inside the organization hears this show and they hear this episode and they get mad, because this team needs to get angry. Kevin, earlier this week in a press conference, I counted 7 times from 3 different people the word hope was used when asked about the path for the future for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And hope has never won a football game. Hope is never going to win a football game. You know what hope gets you? A top 10 draft pick. That's what hope will get you. The only player interviewed that day that did not use the word hope was young all-pro right tackle Tristan Wirfs. He's the only one that didn't use the word hope. He talked about doing things and fixing things and making things right. Other veterans, I'm not going to call them out by name right now, and a coach used the word hope 7 times between the 3 of them, Kevin. That is why I don't think this game is going to go well, because until this team stops looking for hope and starts fighting for answers, it's just going to be what it is.
And we've seen, it's almost outside of the top couple teams in the NFL, both conference-wise, David, we've seen a lot of just bad football this year. Upsets galore happen here and there. So this is a game, like, literally it could go either way. But for the Ravens to have what has happened to them this year, where you could argue they could be a lot of different records right now. You could say they could be 6-1. They could be 1-6 because of everything that has gone well and then everything that has gone terribly wrong. But the fact is the Ravens are getting healthier, and that is where I'll say hope, where you hope the Ravens will be able to put together a string. But you're right, you can't rely on that. You have to be able to go out there, do your job, execute. And for an offense where I think over the past 3 weeks, the defense has carried the offense, where when you have a quarterback in Lamar Jackson who is so talented, you have to be able to put up more points than I think the Ravens are putting up right now. Some of it falls on Greg Roman, who has been on the hot seat for fans in Baltimore for upwards of 2 years now. It seems like, is his time coming to an end? If the Ravens lose this game, the Ravens might need a spark somewhere. Maybe it is Greg Roman. Maybe it's a trade. The trade deadline is coming up. Maybe Tampa looks for a spark on the trade market. Who knows what goes on with these next couple of days, next couple of weeks. But for both teams, this is the important stretch where, like, you're not going to get eliminated from the playoffs if you lose this game. But it goes a long way for, I think, momentum in a season, for how you feel about your players and your coaches and your team for a season. And for both ways, I'll bring it back to what I said at the beginning of the show. For the Ravens stringing together wins, for the Buccaneers getting out of that rut, it is so important both ways, but only one team can have to win unless there's a tie. And I really hope there's not a tie. I do not like ties.
Ties should be banned from Thursday. Like, if any game of the week should just have a special rule, no ties on Thursday Night Football. If we're going to stay up that late, give us a win for somebody. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And the ironic thing is that one of the players who used the word hope previously, it said that there's hope and then there's reality. And then he went on to say that he hoped his offense played better in the coming week against Baltimore Ravens. So that's just how it's going here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But you know what? The shows are doing well. The network is going strong. So we appreciate that. And of course, we can't do that without all of you out there watching and listening. So we thank you again for making the Locked On Bucs and Locked On Ravens podcast first listener, your first view of the day. Whether you're celebrating, you're in pain, looking for answers, we are here for you, and we are happy and sad and frustrated with you all at the same time. So is the Locked On Sports Today podcast. From the games that matter to the biggest stories in sports, you can go beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes with local experts and insight that only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today available here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We will both be back with post-game reactions. One of us is going to be happy. One of us is not. For Kevin Oestreicher, I'm David Harris. Until we speak again, make sure you're checking out everything we're both writing. I'm at BucsGameDay.com. Kevin is at the Ravens Wire. Follow, like, subscribe on YouTube or your podcast catcher of choice, and follow us on Twitter at KOStriker34 and at DHarrison82. If you're out and about there, please be safe, be kind to one another, enjoy the game. Thank you for joining us on this crossover Thursday episode on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.